Hello YouTube, and welcome back to World of Warships. So today I've got two full games and then a couple of clips that I'd like to show. And then also a few things that I'd like to talk about. This first game I'm playing in the American Tier 5 destroyer, the USS Nicholas. Which, I actually like this ship, but I'm not really much of a destroyer player. I'm not that good a destroyer player. My last video may have demonstrated that I'm pretty into battleships, and that's not really the same thing as here. I do skip ahead, just because there's kind of a boring little sailing around at the bit, even with a relatively fast ship like this. This is an epicenter match, which means that this center area is really only capable by destroyers. Destroyers are the only ships that are small enough, fast enough, and stealthy enough to make it into this area. And the Nicholas is pretty good against other destroyers, so I come into the center, and as soon as we see this Clemson, I start firing at him. I'm not quite as bold as the other destroyer on my team, but I'm happy to contribute, especially since I feel like I can turn to port if things get hot. And escape into the rocks. But it should be noted that this game at low tiers is still very much a destroyer's playground. I feel that destroyers have a pretty significant set of advantages at low tiers, by which I mean tier 5 and down. And the fact that we have more destroyers in this game is really quite important. And being in an American destroyer myself, I feel like a big part of my job is to try and hunt down and sink the enemy destroyers. So I see this guy here and I'm thinking, ooh, goody goody. And indeed, I'm pretty happy to start taking chunks out of him. I probably I probably didn't need to wait on my torpedoes like that. But, partly because the Nicholas is really a gunboat, and I really probably ought to repair my engine instead of using my engine boost, but no, whatever. Did I mention I'm not that great at destroyers? But fortunately for me, I'm a small, fast ship, and while there are certainly some enemies aiming at me, I don't really take that much damage here. And then I drop off radar, because the closest ship is hiding in the smoke and can't see me because he's in the smoke. I fire a couple of speculative spreads into the smoke and then just kind of leave it. And now I'm going to circle back around and see if I can find a more advantageous position. Because I don't want to charge directly into all of those enemies. That would be foolish. But as long as I find a nice middle ground between being far enough forward and not too far forward, I have the potential to have a really big impact in this game. Now, at this point, I really haven't done very much damage. And I've taken a little bit of damage. But the fact that I'm safe is important in the long run, because as enemy ships are sunk, I become more and more powerful. So this battleship, clearly he's got a million other things to think about. He's probably not gonna look at me, and I don't think anyone else has line of fire to me. So I'm gonna start farming him for a little bit of damage. This is the sort of thing that makes destroyers very strong. That I can kind of be in the middle of everything and still be pretty safe. I'm gonna dump some torps on the battleship on the other side and then scoot behind the island. And once again, be fairly safe. And part of, I think, what happens is that destroyers are very small, fast, and stealthy, and this makes them enables them to avoid a significant amount of fire, Also get the blind torps there. Um, but they're also surprisingly resistant to damage as well. Destroyers have a very small health pool, but they're not as fragile as you might think. Now, at higher tiers, the enemies that you face become much more able to significantly hurt you, and hurt you very quickly. But at low tiers, inaccurate enemies, which is really most of them, really can't deal with you very effectively. And my ally torps that guy quite thoroughly. And then I see this carrier and start taking some pot shots at him. Those of you who've watched my previous video will remember that I was severely critical of Battleship accuracy as one of my major gripes. This is something that is significantly improved once you get to Tier 5 and beyond. Battleships get much more accurate. There is still some RNG involved with their shots, but not nearly so much as you were used to with the Tier 4s. Also, I am kind of indecisive with some of my shooting there, which was not ideal, but I got away with it. And this ties into destroyer gameplay then, because at low tiers, battleships almost can't hit you, whereas the higher tier battleships are much more dangerous to you. And this is the sort of things that make destroyers quite strong and battleships less so. In some cases, I should also note, it would be a good idea to turn your anti-aircraft guns off, but I have, for the most part, been behind islands from most of the enemy surface ships, and felt fairly comfortable firing it at the planes. And then in this case, I'm firing my main guns at this at this New York, so it's not like he doesn't know I'm here. But this next segment is really the kicker for me. I'm in the open, I'm firing my guns, I'm detected, this guy is aiming at me. A lot of the normal destroyer advantages aren't in play right now. You know, the stealthiness, especially. Well, I'm not being stealthy. Now, just there, he hits me with a lot of 14-inch shells. And he does quite a bit of damage. It's a fairly large portion of my health. But it's not actually that much damage. I believe those were mostly overpens, and they're not that threatening. I survive that salvo without too much trouble. My ship is not nearly as fragile as the low health pool might make you think. And I'm going to charge this New York. I'm going to continue to charge him. Now, as I come around this corner, he's going to proximity detect me. He knows I'm here. He knows I'm coming. I've got my engine boost to try and get around as fast as possible. He might sink me here. But if he doesn't, and he doesn't, I am guaranteed to kill him. He's screwed. He's dead. There's nothing he can do. My torpedoes will hit him, and they will sink him. Whereas his gunfire is still pretty RNG. He hit me with a lot of very big guns there. And I lost health. I don't have a lot of health left, but I'm still alive. He's dead and I'm not. And this sort of thing is why the low-tier destroyers are so potent. It's just this whole combination of things that they can do. Even when they are spotted, they're remarkably resistant to damage. And I wonder that maybe something needs to be done. Maybe some sort of nerf to the destroyers? Maybe some sort of buff to the other ships? Personally, I think the RNG associated especially with the Tier 3 and 4 battleships is pretty retarded, and I think that maybe that needs to be adjusted. But we're not done yet, people. So now this is a cruiser. By rights, he ought to be able to mop the floor with me. And I mean, once again, I've taken more damage. I'm actually going to fire some armor piercing here because I'm so close, and I happen to know that the Futotaka is so thinly armored that um, I'm actually scoring some citadels. Although as soon as he angles, I have to switch back to the high explosive. I did fire one spread of torps because I don't want it to deny him turning towards me, but he foolishly runs aground, and so I'm going to drop my other set of torps and then skedaddle out of here. Now, admittedly, he didn't play that very well, and I probably should have died, but the fact that there was even a chance of me surviving is a little silly. Especially if you consider that destroyers are in some way, or excuse me, cruisers are in some way supposed to be the destroyer killers. And then finally, I'm going to farm some more damage before the end of this game on another battleship that's, you know, busy with other things. Now, that's just kind of one of those quirks of the low-tier gameplay. This clip is mostly just to poke fun at a not very good player. So I fired some high explosive at this Miyoko because it's what I had loaded. And then I fire armor piercing because he's giving me his flat broadside, and I can citadel that. Now there was also a replay bug there where you have to zoom in and out in order to get rid of that press shift thing. But wouldn't you know it, a little while later, I see that Miyoko again. And he's going in the other direction, but he's giving me broadside again. So I clear my barrels of the high explosive that I had loaded, and I unload armor piercing. Can you guess how this is going to go? That wasn't a little behind, but still a citadel. Let's see if we can do that again. Wait for it. That looks pretty good. Oh, hey, look at that. Playing this match just cracked me up. Because I was actually a tier 6 in a tier 8 match. I'm very much the little fish in this pond. But because that guy played poorly, I farmed quite a lot of citadel damage. And then sometimes later, I see this Leander. He smokes up. But I'm a cruiser with hydroacoustic search. I know how this works, and I find that the Japanese cruiser, like the Aoba that I'm playing here, they're very good at pushing British cruisers out of smoke. Because you've got the big 8-inch guns and the hydro, and you can really punish them. Pop the hydro, and oh hey look, there's some very early torp spots. Now, I probably would have dodged those without any trouble anyway. I was sailing. I knew he was there, and I was sailing directly towards him. But the hydro made it very easy. And the hydro also allows me to spot him in the smoke quite early. Not gonna lie, I really thought that was gonna sink him. So it's a bit of a shame, but I'm angled and bouncing his armor piercing, because that's all the British cruisers get. And he is not angled, and I win. So these clips were mostly just to showcase the citadel mechanics in action when other people give up their broadsides. So that brings us to the final game, which is a game that I really enjoyed because I kind of had a plan, and my team worked really well with that plan, and together we were really successful. I'm a tier 5, the German battleship Konig in this match, where there are quite a few tier 7s. And I'm able to have a pretty good game, but it also has a lot to do with the assistance that I receive from my team. So I spawn closer to the sea cap, which can be problematic on this map. And because of the tiering, I'm reluctant to go over there. But I look at which of my allies have spawned over there, and I realize that I have 3 tier 7 allies on that side. And the Fiji and the Mayhem are both very good ships against destroyers. And destroyers are in many ways what I'm worried about. The other ships I can survive against, at least for a while, even though I'm only tier 5. But destroyers can really chew me up. So I fast forward here a little bit as we get close to the action. I decide to come over here and support these guys, because I feel like they can kill the destroyers, and I can provide some tankiness and some big punch against other types of ship. I did get spotted on my way over here, which wasn't great. The aircraft, the spotting plane that I think came from one of the Boudionis, spotted me. But I take my opening salvo, and then I kind of screw up the recording. Because I was trying to get rid of the replay bug, but I get a couple of citadels, and that's the sort of support that I can provide against these cruisers to make my allies more confident. And I see that we've already sunk destroyers, and suddenly I'm feeling a lot more confident about pushing into this sea cap. And also, the Fiji in front of me is drawing a lot of fire. And if I can get up in front of him and draw that fire away from him so that he survives, that could be really important. Because he's a fairly strong ship in this matchmaking. And the ships that we can see are ships that I can tank against. So I, of course, keep firing whenever my guns are ready. And I'm going to sneak past this Fiji here. While he tries to sail back out of this. A big part of the sea cap on this map is that if you go in here and you're not able to outfight the enemies that you meet, you just die. Because there's no escape from this cap zone. But because of the team comp that we have here, and because the destroyer that we saw has already been sunk, I'm feeling pretty confident about making an aggressive push through this sea cap. And because I have some tier 7s backing me up, I feel like we can really make something happen here. And get another citadel. This is kind of what I talked about in that first match. The tier 5 battleships are much more accurate than the tier 4 battleships, to an almost alarming degree. And I have been able to consistently do good damage in the tier 5 battleships. The Konig is no exception. Although admittedly the German shtick is kind of really tanky but not great accuracy. The Konig has pretty small guns and gets kind of thrown a bone in terms of her gun dispersion because of the way she's a little undergunned. It does mean that these guns are quite strong against cruisers. And I'm, of course, drawing fire now from multiple different ships, but that was kind of the point. And I knew that this was going to happen, and was honestly counting on this, because as long as I'm drawing fire in my tier 5, the tier 7s on my team don't have to take that damage. And I'm a battleship. I'm a German battleship. I have a repair. I can survive this for quite a while. Now, I do probably wait a bit too long to repair. I was originally not going to repair a single fire, but the instant that I got a second fire set on me, I really probably should have gone ahead and repaired that off. I'm going to go ahead and swing my turrets around because I want to stay closer to the middle of the map. I'm not a real fast ship. If I go chasing real deep, I can end up real out of position later on. And lo and behold, my teammates are pushing up with me. It's wonderful. I've got this Mayhen who's now pushing in front of me to give me a destroyer screen just in case. I believe the other enemy destroyer was spotted on the other side of the map, but you never know. Destroyers can get across a lot of sea pretty quickly. He's going to give me advanced warning of any torps, any shenanigans that could go on here. I'm still drawing some fire, but my health pool is holding up quite well. My armor's holding up quite well. And I've got the York pushing up with me. The Fiji's gone through the canyon there, but that's fine. Ooh, another citadel. There are 2 battleships here, and ow, that was not a hit that I wanted to take, but Well, better that I take it than one of the Tier 7 cruisers. In many ways, their ships are more valuable than mine anyway, and those are the sort of hits that can sink them, but I'm still floating. And so now it's pretty much just a straight slugging match between these enemies and my team. But we've got quite a bit of massed firepower here, and while I'm taking quite a bit of damage, this is not a bad situation for our team. There's the Nuremberg again. We'd really like to sink him. But he's kind of at a fairly long range where he can dodge a lot of my shells, and I just don't put out the volume of fire. I'm really hoping that one of my teammates is going to be able to take him out with their lighter guns. Come on, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see, he's not giving me a very good target. I mean, I could fire into his superstructure and maybe do some damage, but if he would turn, that would be great. Yes, 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 that's what I want to see. Come on. That's pretty good for a single salvo, considering that, I mean, it's not like I can delete technically, I believe it was actually a Kirishima, but the replay only seems to recognize it as the Congo that it's based on. And oh, would you look at that? We've sunk the Italian Tier 5 there. And now we're just down to... Well, now it's pretty much a given that we're going to win this. Because we got a bunch of ships all shooting at this Kirishima, and I'm still alive. And he's not looking at me, he's focusing the York, who's closer to him, and is a little more squishy anyway, although admittedly I'm on low health. And so I'm basically just kind of sailing along, more or less broadside, and just pounding him over and over. And at this point, I mean, we've won this flank. And it was really satisfying to have that really decisive push through the sea cap. And it was really satisfying to have that really good teamwork where I was able to push up and tank hits because they killed the destroyer, and they were able to push up behind me because the enemies were focusing on me. And in the end, we pretty much all survived. Which means I can turn into the middle now and, you know, try and chase down a little bit of extra damage at the end of this game. And this was just a really satisfying game to play for, you know, all the reasons that I've described. And it also, I think, does a little bit to illustrate why, once you get to that Tier 5 threshold, I really feel like battleships get kind of thrown a bone, if you will. Which I appreciate. And it means that ultimately, I am now prepared to recommend this game. In my original video, I was really critical of things that mostly were just Tier 4 things. And if you can just endure it long enough to get past that Tier 4 bubble, I really think this game is worth a shot. It's not perfect. There's still some definite issues, but I feel quite comfortable recommending this game, especially since it's free, at this stage. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off because the rest of this match is basically me just chasing down a couple of enemies. I get a couple of shots into the Flint. I get a couple of shots into the, I think it's the Duke of York. And then the game ends. But it's not really that interesting. So we'll catch you all next time. And thank you for watching.